I mean, there's a time for fun.
Are you ready to shut up and listen and hear what I wanted to say that I never got to say?
Yeah.
Not
well,
only
let
that,
him speak.
not only that, I got the cameras rolling. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. She's got the evidence, Joe.
You're on. You're on, brother.
Yeah. Shut up already. So the point is that what I wanted to say is that I want the judge to treat all the paperwork as a simple request for a hearing by the state whether they can justify the marijuana laws. And I did ask a professional lawyer today and yesterday, can she locate and get an idea, has it ever been done? Has there ever been in the state of New York, even at the trial level, a hearing whether the state can justify the marijuana laws, the court announcing that the burden has shifted, that they're satisfied that the right of liberty and freedom of thought are involved, and that alone is enough to announce that the burden has shifted to the state and to have that hearing. So what happens is you send a letter to the state's chief lawyer, the attorney general, and he sends a representative, and that's why it's important to serve him when you serve these papers. I trust you did that.
Which I did, yes.
Okay. So he was invited to the hearing. So the idea is that you got so many words all over the place that even though it's on the front page, you didn't use that as the title of your papers. So it's not called a request for hearing. It's all over the place. So I was going to offer as a simple solution, as a friend of the court, or better you send it as an amendment, but I'll settle for friend of the court and just say treat the papers as a simple request for a hearing on constitutionality. The burden has shifted to the state. End of story. That's it. You don't have to lay on any more crap than that. So
Well,
that was my idea.
I agree that everything you're saying is valid and should be done. But I had to cover my butt. If that don't happen, I want the other stuff on the record also. See, this judge could say, we're not going to have that hearing. And then I don't have anything else to go with.
All right, so let's talk about the other stuff you have to go with. After he says, I won't give you the hearing, what do you got to go with? All those citations of courts saying this and courts saying that, that's useless. So what else you got?
Why do you say it's useless? That's the same thing the judge says.
What's the point of it? All you're telling him to do, as far as I got the legal thing, I'm saying again and again and again that the judge has to hold a hearing whether the state can do that. Up until then, what was I going to say here? There's the only law that is controlling all this is that, yes, the job of the judge of the state is to weigh the individual in the state. So when the individual could make a case that the constitutionally protected rights are at stake, then there's abundant legal authority, let's call it that way, for the judge to hold a hearing announcing the burden has shifted to the state. Can they show rational basis in fact or compelling state interest, some justification, as opposed to the law being based on the politics and the mentality of political oppression, which, hello, Judge, have you noticed that's what it really is, political oppression. So you keep it nice and simple. Brief is one of the obligations. Even those poor little pro se people, they had a little trouble being brief. But again, outside of...
Joe, just a second. That's a very demeaning comment. That was 14 pages packed with Supreme Court stuff.
Packed with what?
What's that?
Paula, you're getting too emotional.
What was it packed with? Let's hear what it was packed with.
Supreme Court rulings that have never been overturned. The problem is the trickiness...
Let's assume he listens to all those rulings. Those rulings are about what he's supposed to do after he conducts the hearing.
I know, but you're talking about...
You don't even have to mention any of them. Just say, let's have the hearing. End of story.
Joe, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the demurrer. You're talking about what happens before you even plead. But we're talking, and you recognize, and as an editor, I've got it up on YouTube, you saw that there's an even more subtle argument and that is that I don't stand under the charges. I don't understand why I'm here, period. I'm only here because of the duress of police bringing me here. That's the risk that he doesn't want to take. You're venturing into an arena where they've stacked the deck against you. You're assuming they're going to be reasonable at the hearing. You're assuming that you're going to get the correct medical stuff on the record. But the evidence, and I still have to understand this, the way they do it, they are actually legal. Joe kept saying illegal, illegal, illegal. Illegal by the Constitution, but legal because the corporation of the United States of America has created the jurisdiction where, with very graceful sleight of hand, you give up your rights. And I can see it in what Lindy Heiss sent. Did you see that too, you and Jay, Joe?
Yeah.
The way he was asking the questions, just bang, bang, bang. It's all about the jurisdiction of the United States of America incorporated in the District of Columbia. That mystifies us because its borders coincide exactly with what the Founding Fathers set aside. But it has nothing to do with the organic Constitution. So by the organic Constitution, all that Supreme Court ruling works. But what you, Joe Friendly, are correct in pointing out is that it doesn't make any difference because now it's irrelevant. And so with the demurrer, you wanted them to prove that to have a hearing to show how it's harmful to the state. Well, they're not interested. They're not really the state. They don't really care about the people. Look at how it was set up. Look at the jurisdiction. Look at the bylaws. Look at the corporation. You've got to go directly to what feeds the corporation. Once you can do that, and the only way I know that to happen is for the sovereign person to stand up. And the sovereignty is in all of us. You were sort of putting down, Joe, that it's impossible that everybody can be a sovereign. As you're sitting there knowingly, because I got all the expressions on your face, you know, feeling that you have the sovereign insight that where it really goes is with this 99% and these like you say, mic check, mic check. I picked up on what you were saying because I've gone there and taped all those events. They're really oftentimes a big waste of time. And that's why Joe said, we don't have contempt for the legal system. We believe in the legal system.
Well, I don't believe in the legal system. But to the extent I do believe in it, I said, let's have a hearing. And I was hopeful that there is the possibility that it could actually be the way it's supposed to be, that there is silence in the court and that the representative of the government, he gives a 15, 20-minute argument that the laws of New York against possession, sale, growing marijuana have wonderful reasons, that it's because highway accidents, people operating machinery, marriage and divorce statistics, whatever the fuck, they can say that, or they can say, Judge, we've looked through all the scientific evidence on our files, and frankly, all we got left is politics. So I guess just some legislatures felt that it was a political advantage that whenever somebody out there, some African American, tries to imagine what it feels like to walk around with the advantages of the rich, whenever he tries to feel high, we'll put him in a cage and make him feel like an animal. So anyhow, we could, tease the judge about, is it right to put in a cage people who just want to feel high, and what's wrong with wanting to feel high, all that kind of stuff. But again, what I wanted to do was to challenge the judge with the simplest, strongest argument that if we simply allege freedom of thought and liberty, not even get into the merging with the divine, which, you had your own reasons for putting it in, but to keep it nice and simple, liberty is enough.
Why should he be offended by divinity? Why should we hide divinity? Why should we pretend that religion isn't the most important aspect of our life? And if you don't believe in God, your religion is not believing in God because you're searching for some kind of kingpin that will keep people together and have them honor their contracts and their agreements and give them the space to share and to love and to be with one another.
I got a question. Wait, hold on a minute. Joe, what do you think about going into civil court on the same thing that we're talking about? Go into the civil court and say, we want to file a suit against the state to show that they have real good cause for all the stuff that they've done.
What stuff are you complaining about that they did? That they busted your place?
Yeah. You know, if I take the ACD, which is adjourned contemplating dismissal, and then I go into civil court and say, I want the state to show that they have good cause for what they're doing.
Because they...
It's the same argument that we're making to this judge made in civil court.
It's a brand new idea. You know, I'm proud of you. You can come up with a new idea and all that, but personally, I think it's not going to go anywhere. Here's where we are. That I don't think they're going to say you have a legal cause of action. You have to show damage, and it might be that the police...
The damage is that these motherfuckers just keep coming in my house and arresting me and threatening me with jail.
What greater damage is there, Joe? What greater damage is there?
Thanks for the question. I have been helping somebody file papers for police misconduct in the civil courts after the case had been dismissed in the criminal courts. And even though he has a pretty good case that they were busting him for no good reason, there is an extra hurdle that they have created by legislation that in order for you to get the government, the city, to pay for a bad bust or bad police activity and all that, you have to show pattern and practice. And what that means is that you have to show that they have repeatedly been doing this to lots of other people than you, which is kind of crazy since you're the only one suing. So what the fuck is that all about?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The requirement is apparently.
No, but you could show pattern just by stating our prisons are full of marijuana prisoners.
Ah,
that's pretty good.
And you're trying to make me one.
Right.
Right. What do you think about the idea of simplifying your papers and saying, okay, how about just treating us like we want a hearing about the constitutionality?
Right, and I could go into civil court saying that I asked in the criminal case for that hearing. They didn't give it to me. I want it in the civil court. I asked for it in the criminal case and they ignored it.
All right, so what you're saying is it's a tort, right? Is that your theory? It's a harm to you by the state?
Yes. They have made my religious belief criminal.
Oh, and it's also they stole from you, and you want a return back of what they stole?
Well, I don't even have to go there. You know what? I'd be willing to give up everything that I lost for freedom. I don't care about it. The money they took, I could write that off without a problem.
Yeah.
If they stop from this point on.
Yeah.
Then I'd just be able to grow my crop and get right back on my feet again.
Well, you got one problem. What the ACD is, it only works if they don't catch you doing it in 6 months. If they catch you, then it's like a disaster. So you can't go back to farming.
Right, I know that.
So that is a weak link in that solution, but yeah.
No, I'm saying if we took it into civil court and won in civil court, you were asking me about damages. I said I'd be willing to forget the damages as far as the money they've taken.
In civil court?
Yeah.
So what would you want instead of damages?
Freedom.
Freedom, right?
Freedom.
I want my rights back. I want them to observe and respect my rights. Right?
So
my rights are worth more than money.
So wait. So what you're calling a civil suit is really a federal suit.
No, I don't want to go federal because the federal. I want to stay in the state. Let the state show compelling reason why they're doing what they're doing.
I'm trying, but I can't make sense out of it. It's too unusual to imagine any hope in the world for it happening. And you were saying, well, Joe, that's because you were educated in an American law school, but I'm really trying, and I think it isn't going to get to first base. That trying to get a handle on the damages. It's like it's an unusual.
The damages are rights violation.
Okay, like if they bust you when they shouldn't bust you, so that's what you're saying.
Right, exactly.
Okay, either they didn't have a proper warrant or they didn't do whatever the fuck. Okay, so that's
no, not even that. Not even that. If I go into civil court and say, under the New York State Constitution, they're acting illegal by making me a criminal. They've created a law. They've created a law that creates criminals.
No, and I think I got you now. So you're saying, can you get a hearing on constitutionality in the civil court?
Right, right.
I think no.
Since they wouldn't give it to me in the criminal court, well then there is no redress for grievances.
No, you definitely deserve a hearing for constitutionality if you can show that liberty and freedom of thought and merging with the divine are involved. So you just have to hang in there on that one. What the lowest court can say is, well, we're only a low court. That kind of stuff gets done at a high court. That is kind of a legitimate argument, though, actually, even though it hurts to hear it, that typically they can say that the higher courts have already decided it's constitutional, so we're just a little trial court. We shouldn't have that hearing here. Don't bother the poor little attorney general to send a guy way down here to a little trial court. Let's wait till it gets to a higher court when they have the hearing. So
no, but the judge is not going to say that. The judge is not going to say that at all. What he's going to say is, the higher courts have already ruled that it's constitutional, and I'm just doing my job, and I'm going to try you on this offense. That's what he's going to do. It's naive to think different. The lower courts they're tyrants, and there's no way that a lower court is going to challenge a higher court's rulings and say, well, maybe they were wrong. So I'm going to hear
where are the higher court rulings? Are they there? Are they there? Has there been a ruling that there's fundamental constitutionally protected, what do you call it, compelling state interest? Has there been even a hearing? That's what I don't know.
I've never heard of it, and I don't think they'll ever allow it.
Because they know they'll never win it. And they got a gig going. They got a monopoly going. That's all it is. And all the
they know that what they're doing is vague and criminal, and you don't think that they're going to take a chance of exposing that in court or bringing that into court and actually explaining themselves.
Well, let me put it another way, guys. In other words, I am so naive, I believe in the legal system, and you're so wise and clever, you don't believe in the legal system.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I don't believe that you're so naive. That I do think that you do have a lot of naive in you, and but I believe in the legal system as it was set up by the founding fathers in the Constitution. But what we have now, well, listen, let me finish. What we have now are all corporate courts. Every little court that you go into has been incorporated. All the state courts, they're all incorporated. They're all about
corrupt?
making money.
Are they corrupt?
Yes, they're all corrupt.
Okay, so if you say they're all corrupt, then we both agree our system is corrupt. which is to
Yes.
say, that's why I don't believe in it.
Unless Joe, unless you can use the law to expose the corruption. When you use the law to expose the corruption, it will rectify itself. That's why it's organic. That's how you heal a body.
That's why I'm offering to make it nice and simple, and you just say, hello, we have demonstrated that liberty is involved because nobody gets hurt when you're playing with marijuana, and the freedom of thought is involved. That one we haven't exactly explained it, but you could understand the judge by now has figured out freedom of thought is involved in marijuana. You don't have to hit him over the head with lots of proof. You can just allege it and say, therefore, boing, there has been a showing of constitutional rights. Therefore, boing, it's time for the judge to do the announcement that the burden has shifted to the state and have a hearing on those terms. So you're saying they're too corrupt to play that game. The idea is not to have any distractions and keep it nice and simple and just be so pure about it that the judge might be thereby intimidated into doing the right thing. That's my naive wish.
Only if he believes in God or some kind of notion that that there is a right and a wrong. If he doesn't believe in a right or a wrong, he would go for the quick kill, which is privilege and riches and respect in this world. Or even in this world, nobody ever questions where the glitter comes from. Nobody's looking at the prisoners. That's why Joe always said, while you're getting high and you're experiencing this right now, our brothers and sisters, thousands and thousands of them, 500,000 of them, for nothing other than what you're doing right now, are sitting in jail. Why? And more than that, why are you not caring? Why do you not want to think about it? Why do you not want to study the legal system, the court system, the financial system, to understand how it's put together? Because when you do, you'll see there is a remedy. In truth, those courts are legal, but we're tricked. But the intention of what it was set up for was to trick and defraud and to grab and to suck the equity and the wealth out of the people. And nobody has seen it until now because it's such a wrong system, but it's such an anciently wrong system. And that's why you see the remedies, and they come back through ancient times of all the law books and the holy books. In civilizations where law books and holy books were one and the same. It was the same study. Whether it was mathematics or medicine or politics, it was all one study. And that is the pathway towards our unity and our divinity. So if the judge is enthusiastic about that, maybe he honors his intellect, and he has value in how he tricks people. And maybe he feels that his tricking people is teaching them, because someday they're going to wake up and understand how they were tricked. Maybe that's how they justify it.
No, Paula. What it is that they believe that their job, they're incorporated. As a corporation, they believe that their job is to bring in revenue.
And it is for a corporation.
So every time someone comes into court, they see it as, we got to get a conviction because it brings in revenue. And where you said that there's remedies in the law, at this point in time, they may have written remedies into the law, but no judges pay attention to any of the remedies.
Oh, they're not supposed to pay any attention. Everything they do is to deceive you away from seeing those remedies. But that's why the remedies, the only way the remedies really work is when you show so clearly that it pulls the plug on the entire corporation. Only when you get your consciousness that deep or that high that you can perceive that, can you call it. Once you perceive it and can call it, then all the tools are there. You just have to study and know how to erect your ship, or build your case, as you say.
Well, even you, Paula, you're being naive because you don't realize, you're not really realizing the intensity of the corruption. These guys, they know what they're doing.
That's
and
true.
If I went in there, let's say I went in there with the perfect argument, and I had all my remedies and all my ducks in a line, the judge is going to ignore it or say it's frivolous, or, you know what I mean? and say it has no merit. They know what they're doing.
You know, personally, I don't believe that. I believe that if you do it real good, even though the judge is a bastard, just in his head there is already enough reflexes to respond to the truth and the right and the just that it's not easy for him to be a son of a bitch.
You see, it's easy for you to say that, Joe.
I'm imagining it. I mean, it's like that's my little belief. I actually still believe in the power of the word, that if you nail him real good and you're watching while he reads it, you know, maybe you'll watch some sweat come from his forehead, but I mean, he's going to feel it. You're thinking he's so totally cynical, he's just looking out for how to play the game for the fascists?
Yeah. And see, the difference between me and you is I've been in court many, many times, both as the defendant and watching other cases go down. And I watched the judges railroad person after person after person, and just, you know, it's so foul and so corrupt. These judges, they believe that that is their job, to make sure that this person gets convicted and to shoot down any argument that might keep that from happening, and to put every advantage in the hands of the prosecutor. Just like when I first started arguing in New Jersey, my religious arguments, right? I was going to have a jury trial. The judge said to me, you can't mention religion in front of the jury. You can't argue that. That's not a valid argument. That is my argument. How can you tell me that's not my argument and I can't say that in front of a jury? If my defense is it's my religion and this law violates my religion, I was a fugitive for 18 years because of this, right? And if you won't allow me to present my defense, and you're going to limit my defense or say my defense can't be said in front of a jury, then I have no defense. The judge says to the jury, he admits the marijuana was his. The law says possession is illegal. Therefore, the only thing you can rule is he admitted it's his. He's guilty. And the jury came back and said, well, it didn't go to a jury because I eventually fucking said to the judge, we don't need a jury. Why don't you crucify me and get it the fuck over with? You know? But the jury would have had no choice but to follow the direction of the judge when he tells them, this is the law. The law says possession of marijuana is illegal. He admits the marijuana was his. Therefore, right, end of story. But he didn't allow the jury to hear my reason for possessing. I believe it's my religious right. He would not let me say that in front of the jury. So the judge set up the case, guaranteed I'm a loser. And I became a fugitive for 18 fucking years, trying to raise a family. I had 3 kids at the time, trying to raise a family as a fugitive, which meant I couldn't get a job because if I went down and got a job and gave them my Social Security number, they'd come come and get me, which forced me to have to fucking deal drugs to try to support my family when that put me at more risk.
Wow.
The whole system is set up so the judge is there to limit your defense and give every advantage to the prosecutor. That's what they're doing to Lindy Heiss. Lindy Heiss had a medical marijuana license to distribute, to give it to medical patients. When they say to her, you can't mention that you had a medical marijuana license to the jury, what defense does she have? They say she was growing marijuana. Growing marijuana is illegal. And she can't go in and say, well, I was growing medical marijuana. So now they put her in a position where she has no defense.
Well, one legalistic notion is for you to come come up with an argument why you get, like in your trial, why you get to mention religion. And one reason is to say that an element of the crime is an evil heart. And if you're using the marijuana to embrace the divine, then that goes to it not being an evil heart. Did you know that that's an element of a felony crime?
Right, I know.
That's
All right,
beautiful.
so you'd have to come up with an argument, and if you weren't into that one, the usual religious argument obviously goes to constitutionality, but after that step is over, when we're talking about trial, to get past what the judge was saying, that the only issue is possession, then I guess he's limiting you to ways you can argue it, and the clever legalistic way is, again, it was going to the maliciousness, what do they call it? A felonious intent is the language they use. So an element of a crime is that you do it feloniously, and so you can jump on them there and say, if you're doing it for religion, that's not felonious.
A lot of that's real easy for you to say because you've never been busted and went into court as a defendant. Go into court.
That's what I came up with that when I got busted.
Yeah, but what were you busted for?
Possession.
Yeah, of how much?
Yeah, not much, like a half an ounce.
Yeah, that's nothing.
Right.
Get a pound of weed, go down in front of a cop and say, hey, I got a pound of weed. Fuck you. You know what I mean?
All right,
and,
get the deal. Just a minute, I'm going to go do that right now.
and then you'll have a whole different take on the legal system.
Yeah. What does that change do to
You will not be so willing to say, oh, the judge is fair and impartial. The judge is going to rule on law. No, the judges, they're all criminals.
Let me put it another way, guys. What sounds to you as naive is basically a professional tool for writing, that in order to write to a judge in my own head, in order to do it properly, I have to reach into his head for all this good, hopeful possibility that he'll actually respond the way I want and have a hearing and conduct the hearing in an impartial way. And then after he's listened to what the state has said and that way we said, then he says, you win, the state didn't give a good argument, and now I get to be a hero in the newspapers. And even though everybody thought I was a right-winger, see, I'm an open-minded guy after all. I believe in justice, and let them all out of the prisons, and let's all have a pot party. But I do try to imagine when I'm writing that everything lines up good as best I can, and I'm just appealing to the good. You know, that's just, I don't know how to write any other way. I don't know how to write in a trickier way so that I'm covering my bases even if he's a motherfucker. I don't actually try to do that part. Not too much, you know, where I can think of something to do about it, I do, but I can't think of much to write in that direction of dealing with him wanting to cheat. I'm just, you know, what do you call it? It's like I'm serving it up to him. It's such a beautiful pitch, right smack in the middle, that he thinks, wow, maybe I could actually do the right thing and it would turn out to be good. That's sort of what I'm hoping. I mean, doesn't it dawn on him it might be a good thing to knock down the marijuana laws, you know, that there's a 61% against the laws and all that kind of stuff?
Even if the judge thought that, the judge is saying, my higher-ups will fire me if I do that.
I'm not really an independent judge.
The state is taking in too much money, and the state is benefiting from this. And if I rule that the state is wrong, I will never get appointed to the next higher judgeship.
But it's not the state, it's a corporation.
Or, okay, the corporation. But the point is, every judge wants to go from being a little judge to a bigger judge. And they know if they do something to rock the boat, they're not going to move up to be a bigger judge.
But maybe you can see, though, that the judge who knocks down the marijuana laws, he does have a possible growth path.
No, I think they all...
Would he be a hero?
Well, he may be a hero in a lot of people's eyes, but I think they know... I think that they know that the powers that be are going to buck and sack them for it.
Huh. Well, I guess I am naive there. I'm really thinking that, well, at least around where I'm at, is that judges are elected, but it is up to the party bosses who gets on the ballot.
Right.
So in that sense, you can't piss off the big sense. Although
right.
I
and
really
you know,
think it's about
there was
time.
even the Supreme Court. There's a ruling. I don't remember the actual case thing it was, but where the Supreme Court told the appellate courts, right, that if a case comes up the chain, that if they overturn that case, it means that they got to overturn all the other cases that have already been ruled, and they got to start letting people out of jail. The Supreme Court told them not to hear that case.
Because the economists have never really studied economy. They're not ready for it. We don't have the intellectuals and the thinkers in place yet.
We're not ready for its legalization, Your Honor.
But we're getting there.
No, but the Supreme Court has told the appellate courts that if a case comes up the chain and you rule that the law is no good and it's going to free all kinds of people and it's going to have influence on thousands of other cases, not to take that case, not to let it happen. So if that's the way it's set up, there's no possible way of winning. There's no possible way of overturning.
Well, can that be ignored? Can that be ignored, that instruction? I mean, they're just saying it would be inconvenient to have to reverse a bunch of mistakes?
Well, they're not saying it's inconvenient. They're saying don't do it.
But
that's what they said.
They don't have
I wish I had the case site. Actually, there's two of them that I read, and both of them said it. That especially when it comes to the legislature. If the legislature makes a law, and that law is putting a lot of people in jail, and a whole lot of cases are stacked up. If a case comes up, that case is going to free all those, is going to make all those other cases get thrown out. They're not supposed to hear it.
Wow.
And I wish I knew. I just happened to bring it up, and I read it, and I wish I had saved it.
Well, could you put it another way? In other words, they're saying that a lower court should not defy the authority of higher courts, in which a lot of cases are already based on them.
Yeah.
No, they're saying that not to let it get to them, to stop it in the appellate division before it gets to the Supreme Court. Don't rule in favor, so that the state now has to bring it to the higher court, to the Supreme Court.
Well,
and the Supreme Court has even said that they don't want to step on the legislatures. They're saying that we have three branches of government. We got the president, we got the Senate and the Congress, and we got the court. Now, the Supreme Court don't want to step on the Senate and Congress. If Congress makes a bad law, the Supreme Court don't want to overturn what Congress has just done. They say...
Yeah.
So if Congress makes a bad law and the Supreme Court don't want to hear it, that leaves no redress for grievances.
Correct. So they should, and it's just more. It's an example of corruption. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the Supreme Court should actually be a watchdog for the encroachment by Congress on the rights of the people. But the Supreme Court has wimped and said, well, you know what, we're not going to go against them because they also decide our salary, I think. You know, I mean, it's like, so...
No, it's not that the salary is decided by how much income is flowing from the $350 a day per each prisoner. That's the policy.
No, I'm talking about the Supreme Court, Paula.
No, but when you're talking about you're saying that they don't take cases that's going to release thousands of prisoners. I'm saying the reason that they can't take cases that's going to release thousands of prisoners is because the whole system is feeding off that system.
Right, right.
That's what I meant. That's how it affects. It's not that somebody says we're going to dock your pay. It's they can see it, you know.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a given. It's an unspoken. It's understood.
Right.
You know, you go to the golf club, you know, and you play with people, and you know, it's sort of known how much the court has brought in that week, or that month, or however they tally it all up. There's an actual QSIP number that's put on each indictment. As soon as the person's indicted, that's then traded on a bond market. I mean, if that isn't slavery, the dealing in human flesh, that's what they're doing. They're trading human flesh.
Yeah.
And that's from ancient times. That's there in the Torah, the Old Testament. I'm sure it's in the Vedas, how people become slaves. But there's always the remedy out. You're a slave first in your mind, and it's the consent. You accept it. The opposite of that is the belligerent claimant, to say, no, I'm standing up, my rights are priceless. That's why the Founding Fathers had that. It's not just sort of, oh, maybe now and then you need somebody to be a belligerent claimant, or maybe they were dramatic, or you only needed to be belligerent then when the British were doing stuff. But you take a look at what was happening then and what was happening now, it's much worse now.
Yep, much worse now.
Getting back to the item at hand, Joe, as between me doing a friend of the court and you're coming back and saying, how about this deal, Judge? Treat it as a simple request for a hearing, and let's go with that.
Joe, if you did the ADC, could you, or ACD, could you then pick it up in civil court and do it even though Joe Friendly thinks that's unconventional and you can't have the hearing in a civil court? It's obviously safer. Who would fault you for wanting to be safe?
I don't know. See, and to ask any lawyers, no lawyers have ever gone there, and most lawyers, they know, they've been programmed by law school to think a certain way, right? So that they're already indoctrinated into a way of thinking. When
I don't think a civil court is not going to be able to declare the law unconstitutional. I think that's the case, but it's like there is probably some legal reasoning that one could come up with to hash it all through. Why a civil court? It has. I think it's like you don't challenge the constitutionality unless you're in jeopardy. It might be that some kind of argument like that. But
I can say I am in jeopardy because I refuse to stop doing what I'm doing. If it's my religious belief, then I can't stop. It's like if you believe in God and the court says it's illegal to believe in God, now you either give up your belief in God because of the court, or you continue your belief in God and then they persecute you for it.
Yeah, I hear all that, but I still think it's not a winner. But let me come back to if we were to stick with the criminal case, after you lose, you can still ask for an ACT. It's before trial. But the question is, can you see the language you would use to surprise the judge by coming back and saying, "I'll make it simple"? That was the idea, basically. It's just to surprise him with a single page. And I think you could put it on a single page. But is there any...
Joe, I think you're going somewhere...
Don't even let me put in any more paperwork. He already said I've had my limit for putting in... My time limit for putting in paperwork is over.
In his
That's
time...
an argument for me to do it because he didn't say that to me.
Yeah, but see, they were never indicted, so there's not even a case number, is there, Joe? So you wouldn't be...
Well, I think they're... I don't know what they're going to what they're saying. Originally, it was felonies. Then that court, the higher court, chose to not indict us. Then the prosecutor said a Class A, and then he dropped it to a Class B, and then he dropped it all the way down to possession of a joint with a $100 fine. Now, I don't know, when the judge said we're going to take this to trial, I don't know what I'm being charged with. What are we taking to trial?
Right.
And if they were willing to give me an ACD, but if we take it to trial, they're going to move it back to felonies. Now what they're doing is they're saying, if you assert your right to go to trial, we're going to penalize you for it.
Right. That's par for the course.
What's that?
That's par for the course, that bargaining about whether or not a trial is the logic of making different deals with the judge all the time.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
You really should check out Billy Faust, Joe. You really resonate with judges, and this guy was a Supreme Court judge in Arizona. It's Billy.
Yeah, you really should watch that, Joe.
Faust. He'll really, when you say you have your little belief in the goodness, I want your belief to be bigger and bigger and bigger. I want it to be right, Joe. I know how you...
It is funny how, when we were saying, I believe in the system or I don't believe in the system, and you or you don't,
you use contempt.
Cross in opposite directions. That I don't think the judges are as bad as you describe. And then I would qualify that some of them are real bad, but I think there are judges who accept the role of judge not from the point of view of doing the corrupt thing.
This particular judge is a tyrant. And even if I lose in this court and I appeal it, I go before another tyrant who I've been before already.
Uh-huh. So
and I know that once two judges have ruled that your shit is no good, then the higher court is going to not even hear it. They're going to go, look, two judges agreed. And maybe one judge is wrong, but two judges, we're not going to hear this.
It depends on what you're right. I don't think it depends on how many judges. But lots of luck, yakety-yak, and all that sort of thing, yeah.
But don't think for a minute because we disagree with a lot of what you're saying, Joe, that we don't love you. We do.
Mergence with the divine.
How many more minutes you got?
49.
Well, back at Judy Wood.
I'm up at the fish right now.
Say that again?
The fish is sleeping. Oh, no, he just woke up. I said he was sleeping, and he got embarrassed. He woke up. He heard me. You know my beta fish?
Joe, that Judy Wood thing that you don't think so?
Yeah.
Listen to this. Back when Tesla, right, was doing his thing, Tesla made this little thing that he had in his pocket, and he went and connected it to a building, right? And he started vibrating the building. And they made him shut it off because they were afraid that he was going to bring the whole building down.
Uh-huh.
Now, that technology, when Tesla died, the government went in and grabbed all his research. And I'm sure that the military-industrial complex took all that research, and since Tesla died, they've taken it so far. I think that this woman, Judy, really is onto something, you know? And let me tell you something else I know. As far as them talking about no planes and people saw the planes, you know, anytime you look at the footage of those planes, you know, where they got cameras on the planes don't look like, if normally you took a picture of a plane, it looks very solid. If you look at those pictures, the planes don't look solid. Now, another thing that came along, we met this guy when I was working with Rob Robertson on doing the harvest festivals, right? This guy came along, and he had major bucks. He had a whole recording studio in a mobile van, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was living in it. He had this super recording studio built into it, right? And I asked him, well, where did you get all your money, right? And he told me that he invented a holograph, right?
Yeah.
That was so good that as soon as he applied for the patent for it, the military came in and said, we're going to buy your patent, and they bought it from him, right? And they shelved it. So the military has the technology to create a hologram, I mean a perfect hologram. So from no matter which side you look at the hologram, it's not a one-sided hologram.
Uh-huh.
Now, the planes could have been holograms, and something else made the hole in the building, like, you know, or the planes could have been a hologram over a rocket, so that you can't see the rocket, but you see the hologram. And they could have used the Tesla stuff to bring down the buildings. That woman makes a lot of sense. If you really look at that, from the top down, those buildings are pulverized into dust.
I definitely agree they were pulverized to dust. No question about that. Did you think I didn't agree on that?
Yeah, and that the thermite thing, I think there would have been a lot more debris than what we have. That woman's thing is the clearest thing that I've seen yet, even though she doesn't say, well, here's the technology I know exists. She's saying, I'm sure the technology exists, but I don't have it. I can't show it to you. But
have you seen the key photograph of the nanothermite that they found in the dust in the peer-reviewed chemical physics paper published in April of 2009?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that information, but it's possible even that they put some thermite. You got to remember the criminals that were involved in this. They did computers. These guys, they do computer stuff before they do anything. They say, well, if we do this, what's going to be the result? They run all the scenarios and all the possibilities. Like, let's say they're thinking about if we nuked Russia, what would happen? And they've run maybe 100 scenarios of, well, if we nuke them, they're going to do this, and if then they do this, then we're going to do this. And they run it all on computer simulations to see what's the final outcome. They do the same thing with the way the American people think. They say, well, if we do this, what's going to be the reaction of the American public? And then what are we going to say to that reaction? And then some people are going to come back at us again, and what are we going to say to that? And before they make any moves, they've run all the scenarios, and they cover all their bases. So what these kind of guys say, well, if we're going to take down this building, let's put a little thermite in there so that we can set up a group to say, oh, it was thermite. And then let's make this other group to say, those people are crazy, it was this. And all of that is distractions from what really happens.
All right, now let me give you a quick little lesson in what we're talking about here. What is thermite? Can you tell me?
What's that?
What is thermite?
Oh, it's a super high explosive. You know, it gets so fucking hot that it melts everything, that it destroys everything.
All right. Let me back up here a little bit. Thermite was discovered around 1890. It is the discovery that when you take particles of aluminum and particles of rust and somehow ignite it, that it achieves a temperature of 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, which melts steel, which melts at 2750. You're thrown at 4,500. And that is the story of thermite. It is not explosive. It just gets hot. Then, 30 years ago, they discovered nanotechnology in general. Nano is simply the discovery that when you go down close to the molecular level in terms of small size, then you get new things. When they take the particles of aluminum and the particles of rust and they go nano, then those particles become billions instead of millions, 1,000 times finer, and then they discovered they got an explosive. So nanothermite is an explosive, and what is it? It's very small particles of aluminum and rust. Then here's the big thing.
I think it has sulfur and phosphorus also added to it.
Huh? I didn't hear what somebody else was talking.
I think it also has sulfur and phosphorus added to it also.
When you add
military grade
thermate. But anyhow, here's my point, my man. This is the additional information. In order to spray this stuff on, somebody had to invent a very unusual form of this stuff, which is no longer, as I just described, little particles of aluminum and little particles of rust. Nanothermite adapted for spray is not, again, little particles of aluminum and little particles of rust. Instead, it is a complicated silicon matrix on top of a nano-sized ceramic chip. And in the silicon matrix, the silicone is formed like a foam, a sponge. And in the little chambers of the sponge are perfectly formed cubes of rust and plates about 6 times that size of aluminum, so that you can have in each little hole, or not each, but in many of the little holes in the foam, you have a couple of cubes of ferrous oxide and a plate of aluminum, and then you go to this other one, and there's 3 there, and there's 5 there, and 2 there, and 1 there, up against a little aluminum plate. So that is what they found in all 4 dust samples on 9/11, was this very complicated silicon matrix on top of nano. This is so nano that the all this foam is like a little red sponge, I don't know what you call it, some crap on top of a little ceramic chip, and the little ceramic chip itself is a billionth. It's all this stuff is real small. So that's what they found. And when I say figure 9, if you ever get to figure 9 of the Herod paper, I can send it as a link. You see this strange stuff of these little cubes of rust and these little plates of aluminum hanging out together. It's like no accident. This is what caused And one more thing is, how did this stuff get sprayed on? Was that the Port Authority announced on September 12th, 2000, that they wanted to give a contract of $1 million to somebody to go throughout the building and spray to deal with the problem they were complaining about, that the floor tiles that were made out of were leaking asbestos, were leaking asbestos into the air. So that gave a company the green light to go throughout the building and spray all over the place. And if you look at the name of that company and what they're all about, the company who got the contract was called LVI Services Incorporated. And if you looked on their website a couple of years ago, before they changed it, what their specialty of business was, it said preparing buildings for controlled demolition.
Any comment, Joe? You have 1 minute till we go out.
I don't know. It's like you could be right, and this woman could be right. No one at this point knows the truth, and I don't think that we should shoot down this woman as crazy because her story and everything she's saying is very plausible. Now, it's also plausible that they used thermite, but they could have used thermite and advanced weaponry to cover up the fact that they have this weaponry. They may not want people to know that they can pulverize a building like that. So, the government has stuff so far advanced to anything that they're ever letting us know. It's very hard for us to know the truth. These top secret guys, man, they're sleazebags. They've come up with shit. Like they got drugs that can give you a heart attack, and when you go to when a forensic examiner examines, they can't. The examiner will say, "Oh, you had a natural occurrence. You had a heart attack," but the drugs are so advanced, and if they're that advanced with stuff like that, the CIA has. Like I remember reading. I used to read Soldier of Fortune magazine. And what is the one for mercenaries? There was a magazine for mercenaries. If you wanted to go fight in Angola, you could join the mercenaries. Right? I used to read those books. All right, not because I wanted to do that, but there was a lot of